No, 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 and get out of my face. Hey everybody, welcome back to L-Man Gaming. Today I got for you God of War Ragnarok, 45-hour platinum and spoiler review. So since this is a spoiler review, just want to let you guys know I'm going to be trying to cover the story fully, but in terms of the footage, you're not going to see any major boss fights or any of like the secret bosses in the game. These are more like the mini bosses and just some decent footage to show you. So, as the title says, God of War Ragnarok is the bigger, better sequel. Unfortunately, there are some shortcomings that do keep it away from true greatness. So let's get right into why you're going to be playing this game, right? The main reason, the best thing about it, the combat. Mechanically, the game is just like, it's almost sound, man. Everything is going to flow so flawlessly between the rolling, the parrying, even some animation cancels. Everything is going to be just in your face very fast, and you can react accordingly because those mechanics are so strong. That's definitely what you want to see in these kind of fast-paced action games, right? You want to be able to respond accordingly, and they give you all the information that you need to do so. I mean, the mechanics are so strong in this game. I'm not even kidding you. Towards the end of the game, we're really middle way through. I started playing the game almost just like Sekiro. I mean, I'm talking about my trigger fingers are on the block parry and then the attack button, thumb on that roll button, and I mean, I wasn't even really even switching weapons that much at that point. Right, I was just so locked in on what I had to respond to, and it felt incredible to be able to react accordingly. So, I mean, I was living that power fantasy of Kratos, where I was just like punching the shit out of everything, and felt really good. But without question, the thing that makes the combat truly special is what they improved upon the most from the first game, which is the enemy variety. I mean, there are just so many new combatants and creatures that you're going to get the clobber, you know, and get to these sick death animations. And that really is like the main dopamine fix, guys. Like, right, the story's moving you forward, but at the same time, right, like you're just so excited to see what this game is going to toss up to you next in terms of mini bosses and bosses, and you know, just again from that mechanical standpoint, right, how you get to use these mechanics in terms of like these new enemies, right, and try to see like if you are learning and improving, and which is something that of course you will do throughout the game, and you will see by the end that yeah, you are a much better player because those mechanics do facilitate that along with the enemy varieties. You know, the enemy variety was so well done, but if I'm being just a little, you know, picky maybe, I do kind of wish they maybe threw in like just one or two more kind of special variants of creatures or again like combatants. I do feel like those like the alligator ones, the Denkai or whatever they were, we kind of fought those like a little too much, you know. So I do feel like it was very close to perfection, and maybe just a couple more would have really just sealed the deal and just made it spot on. But the combat itself, while flawless as it is, unfortunately that upgrade path that goes along with it is subpar in some ways because as you notice, a lot of the skills you're unlocking are skills from the first game. So from a narrative standpoint, I don't even understand how that makes sense. But again, right, because Kratos and Atreus they've been training, you know, this in a couple years now. But so yeah, Kratos has just like forgotten all this stuff. But then again, from that you know factor of like improving and wanting to unlock new things, is like what the heck? Like these are skills from the first game. I've already unlocked these things before, and now I'm having to do it again. So uh, you look at it from that standpoint of like the new stuff. It's like where was the new stuff in terms of like the skill trees? It was definitely lacking there until you unlock the new weapon, which is you know Dropmare. So while the skill trees are pretty weak because you're unlocking, you know, half the shit from the first game, again the combat is absolutely the biggest joy of the game. This is why you're going to be wanting to play God of War Ragnarok to challenge yourself. The difficulties themselves, I played on Give Me Fury, I think, but then like the RPG elements were kind of like bogging me down somewhat. I didn't really feel like upgrading my gear, so I ended up turning it to like give me balance. And honestly, that was actually pretty enjoyable. There's no trophies for like difficulties, so yeah, I felt it was pretty fair. I'm really excited to give it a go on Give Me God of War. But overall, right, that combat experience, right, with this kind of camera, it feels great. It does feel great. Besides, when enemies kind of hit you on the side still. So let's get into more of the kind of controversial stuff, because if you did follow the game a little bit, you know that the developers, right? It was announced early on somewhat that the game was actually going to be 2 games, not actually a trilogy. And I remember when I first heard this, I actually really liked the idea of that. I was like, okay, sure, I can see that working out very well, because you remember like the original God of War, the second one, it felt like a filler, right? There wasn't like a lot of gods to kill and stuff, and it just felt extremely padded out. And then 3, obviously, right? You start off with freaking Poseidon. So I was really excited to, experience more so just fighting the main gods in this game. But now after playing the game, I can confirm that wow, it actually did feel rushed. The game did kind of feel rushed at the end, especially, right? I mean, you can almost break the game up into like 3 acts, and when you get to that 3rd act, right when the war starts, like things just go like way too fast, and the next thing you know, the game's over like another hour, 2 hours, and that's just it. And you're kind of like sitting there, like unsatisfied, and the game ends like an awkward way too. So yeah, I really would love to kind of know more about why they decided to really do it as just 2 now, because it really did deserve its, trilogy and a 3rd game. And, there's 2 pieces of evidence, at least for me. I mean, right, just not only from the narrative standpoint that does say that they rushed the game, but also things that you can like definitely point out and just, like say like, yeah, like what the heck's going on here. Now, the first one, maybe it's me actually just complaining too much. I would absolutely love to get people's opinions on this. But the biggest travesty of the game, right? There's 7 deadly sins. We'll make it 8 now, or you could just call it sloth, maybe. I don't know. But I can't believe this. I thought for sure, right? This is like a gimme, like 100% had to happen. Like, how do you fuck this up? How do you not do this? Thor's hammer's not in the game. Or sorry, like you don't get to use his hammer. You don't get to use Mjolnir. Like, what? How? Why? Someone please explain this to me. And again, that goes around like back to like maybe like they rushed it because could they just not figure out a good time to like do it? I mean, I thought for sure it was going to be like part of your weapon tree. Like you actually get this weapon and permanently get to use it. But here's the thing: I would have just settled to just use it against Thor in this boss fight, the second one, like the final one. Just even getting to use it just for like a minute or so, I would have been satisfied. I mean, I really am just want to be petty and say, hey, like, I'm going to take off like I'm going to like score the like review worse just because of this, because I don't get it. Like again, I think about it like this, right? When are we going to get to experience this kind of power fantasy again in Norse mythology with his hammer looking as cool as they designed it too, right? It's never, or not in my lifetime maybe. And so it's like, how do you drop the ball that hard there? In fact, I've been making the joke with my friends that now I know why they put the hammer in the collector's edition, because that's the only way you get to play with this stupid thing now, right? I mean, that's maybe why they did it, Well, it's not in the game, but you spent the $200, you do get to play with it that way. So, again, like, definitely leave me a comment on that if you're even upset about it, because for me, it's like, I mean, right, worst case scenario, they could have let you play this like Thor briefly too. I mean, that really wouldn't work, but right, why not just like a minute in the freaking, actual fight with Thor? Like, come on. But here's the other reason though that you can argue that, they rushed the game. Right, when you do beat it, get this, right? This is the biggest spoiler too, right? Because you find out that, if you want to stop the video, you can, right? That Odin the entire time was Tyr. Well, you end up finding the real Tyr in the game as like some lame ass side quest at the very end that's like totally missable if you're not trying to platinum the game. And it's like this just awkward, it's this awkward like conversation. He's all like chilled out, like, oh man, this is weird. It's like, it's so weird. And then, I actually found him again. You can find him again like in Midgard, and he's just like looking up and he's like, I want to be left alone. And it's just like, okay, bro, sure. Like, no problem. You were just one of the most important characters of the entire game, even though it wasn't really you. And it's like, this is how they treat the real Tyr, just this random ass bullshit at the end. It's like, that should have been part of the narrative, like, without question. So, there you go. They rush the game. So one of the other things I actually want to mention is somewhat random and like a side comment, but towards the end of the game, when you recruit Sultir, the fire giant, Kratos and a couple of the other characters start referring to him as the Ragnarok monster. And if you know Norse mythology, that is a term that like no one uses. Like right, like he comes and destroys Asgard, sure, right? But um, I've never heard it referred to as the Ragnarok monster. So like it made me think I was playing like a Scooby Doo game or something. Every time I heard it, like the spaghetti monster was going to show up and destroy Asgard, and I kept thinking of it's like the Scooby Doo gang showing up and unmasking the Ragnarok monster, and we all find out it's Cory Barlog or some crazy shit. So I don't think the writers probably got together on this because, right, they should have just referred to him as his name, Sultir. But yeah, Ragnarok monster, spooky. You know, because the reason why I mentioned that story too is, like, from a narrative standpoint, um, I mean, listen, I love the story. I think it worked really well, even though, like we just talked about, like it being kind of rushed. But one character I actually did not like to a certain extent, and that was Odin. The actual actor, he was fine. The way he was designed was fine. I liked all that. But I don't know, man. Like, if you really know Norse mythology, like Odin's a G, man, top G. Like the kind of stuff this guy does to obtain knowledge. I mean, he's a badass, like straight up. And I'm supposed to sit here and believe the only thing he had, you know, up his sleeve was just trying to trick them because he was tiered the entire time. Like, I feel like he would have a couple more tricks up his sleeve, man. That just seems extremely weak. And, you know, to leave it up to like a fight at the end there, I mean, I don't know. Just wasn't really completely sold with Odin somewhat. Felt like his character was lacking. Now, as I showed in the beginning, right, I did platinum the game. Now, let's get into really like my biggest negative of the game. And in fact, the biggest drawback to these kind of games is the exploration, right? These levels are very linear in the way they're designed, and the biggest like crime is that when you're trying to collect this stuff, right? It's not open world, so they're throwing in collectibles, but then right, you're trying to like 100% or even just for quests and so forth, right? You're having to backtrack, and oh my god, my head gets like a headache, man. These linear kind of stuff, and you're trying to like orient yourself, and like did I like was I here, you know? And this is other like a travesty too. Like some of the mystic gateways, like the fast travel points, they deliberately like hide some. They deliberately hide some. Like, why are you hiding these from me? This is like crucial to get around your world, especially since it's a pain in my ass to even like, you know, backtrack this stuff. You know, it's nothing interesting to see again. I've already been through here once. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not like disparaging the linear levels here, right? I'm sure, like, I love going through. It feels good. But when you have to go through it like multiple times, I mean, oh my gosh, like no, like it just falls apart completely. Now, let me just stop myself right there because it does sound like I'm being really negative, but one of the best things you can do is, you know, do the controller test. And what I mean by that is, you know, how often are you putting the controller down? And for me, I was completely glued to the TV. I mean, believe me, right? Real life responsibilities, you know, I'm falling behind in real life. I may be progressing in the game, but real life, everything's going to shit. Bills aren't being paid. Boss is calling me, trying to figure out why I'm not showing up. Turns out I'm out of sick days, but you know, we got a game to beat. So there you go, right? You're locked in and you're focused. It just glues you in because that combination of the storytelling and the combat is just that chef's kiss combination. So look, Santa Monica Studios, they don't miss. Right, they perfected the formula back in 2018 with the original God of War. This is just that continuation, and we already knew it was already going to be amazing, and is without question deserving of that 5 out of 5 tag. I love single player games. They're my favorite games at this point, and what God of War Ragnarok does is give you the ultimate combat focus paired with the story driven narrative, you know, that you just do not see in any other games at this point. So if that's what you like, guess what? This is about as good as it gets right now in the industry.